Hey, and welcome back, everyone. Today I'm focusing on the top 10 tips for using Canvas in your DE or EVE class. So like the Zoom top 10 tips, these are meant to provide you with succinct ideas about how to improve your class using the many features available in Canvas. So let's get started with those tips now. So the first tip to focus on today is the idea of using architecture in terms of approaching your class in Canvas. So what's meant by architecture is the idea that you think very carefully about the scaffolding of the class, just like an engineer or an architect would think about the scaffolding and the foundations of a building, to make sure that you've thought about everything for your students. So as an example here, if we look through a Canvas class, and this is the onboarding Canvas shell, one of the things to think about is just what is the structure that you want your students to understand that will be helpful to them in terms of navigating through the class. So as an example here, I might have something like a menu system. I might tell them to begin here, and then based on that, that will take the students through the class. As the students continue to progress through your class, think about the structure of the class. Think about clarity. Think about being able to guide the students through the class in a very seamless sense, such that there isn't a lot of confusion about when assignments are due, there isn't confusion about how to move from one module to the next, and overall they have a clear sense of coherence when they approach your class. So think of using architecture in creating a class within Canvas. And the second tip for us to think about today is the importance of using modules in Canvas. So many people who are familiar with Canvas, so many people who train in Canvas will tell you that if you don't use modules to structure your class, you really are leading your students potentially in a very confusing direction. So one of the things we tell you to do is to consider, as you can see here, if I have pages visible to a student, what that means is the student could view all the pages, and then they have this undifferentiated, potentially, mess that they experience. Because one of the things you notice is that there isn't rhyme or reason as to how Canvas structures the pages or organizes the pages. You could click on creation date here, you could click on last edit. But for a student, if all these pages are available and they start clicking on these and you don't have the order, the progression set up in terms of that architecture that we talked about, it'll be very confusing for that student to navigate. So instead of having undifferentiated pages, and again, we recommend you probably not show students pages, you hide that through your settings, your navigation menu tab, which we can talk about if you have questions. Instead, you should have a module structure set up. It's really up to you if you want the modules to open at a particular time, if you want to have prerequisites, if a student has to say complete a quiz and get a certain score until that student could then click on to the next subsequent module. Totally up to you, but a module structure really allows the student a greater chance at success in your class. So as an example here, the module might begin with a beginning here, and then there might be something like a welcome. And the idea is that the student will progress through the class in somewhat of a sequential order that you have defined up front for the student. So definitely think about using modules as a primary way of establishing structure and architecture in your Canvas class. Okay, so the third important tip for Canvas to recommend to you today is to really understand how content works within Canvas. Canvas is really a very easy LMS or learning management system, but it does take some time in terms of getting up to speed on all the features. As an example of this, if you go to any particular page, in fact, we can just create a new page here for the sake of looking at this. If I click on View Pages, and I then click on Add a new page, it's just very important to understand how content works in Canvas. So a lot of it really is a what you see, what you get kind of editor. So I simply type in text here, and as you'll note on the screen, it does what I tell it to do. So it's really a what you see, what you get kind of editor. Now, if I want to go in deep and use the HTML editor, I can certainly do that. A lot of people want to sometimes use it to add additional features if you're savvy with that. And in a lot of cases, if you want to do something like a special table or padding on a paragraph, padding around a particular photo or alignment of a photo, if you want to really dive in deep, it does maybe behoove you to use the HTML editor. Otherwise, you can just click back on the rich content editor. We'll have some other videos focusing on how to use the rich content editor, but you can do a lot in here. You can do everything from inserting a YouTube video to inserting an image. You could create a hyperlink for any bit of text that you might have or for an image. So full-featured and very powerful. And of course, anytime you save something, just remember to hit save and publish if you want that to be live. As far as the rest of the content on Canvas, there are a slew of other videos you can watch that focuses on how Canvas works. But in short, you have everything ranging from assignments to quizzes, you have announcements, of course you have discussion boards, and you have a lot of features that focus on the social side of Canvas. Everything from the People tab that can help you track participation in your class. It can remind you who's there. You can also, of course, have your syllabus. You should have your syllabus available to students. And then there are a slew of other options for saving files and uploading files, whether they are images or whether they happen to be PDF files. So it's just really important to understand what Canvas is all about in terms of all of its features and understand how you can create your own content within Canvas. Pretty much anything you can dream up in terms of images, in terms of text, in terms of videos and hyperlinks can be done in Canvas. You just have to have a little bit of insight and training to accomplish what your goals are in terms of content. So an important reminder here in terms of thinking about understanding the use of content within Canvas. Now, our next recommendation today is the value of using videos. And videos really provide a multimedia tool, a picture, an audio-visual tool that students can use that gives them a sense of something more personal, because if it's a lecture that you're providing or a screen capture like an experience I'm recording here within Canvas Studio, then it allows really more possibility for interaction with the viewer. So we definitely recommend that you have videos in your class. The number of videos is up to you, certainly. Some people like to have a video for every chapter of a text or for every section of a module. That really is up to you, but think about incorporating videos in your class because it is certainly an important way to create interactivity with your students and to give a little more of a multimedia feel to your class that isn't possible if you just have static text and static images on a page in Canvas. So definitely consider doing more videos in your Canvas class. All right, our fifth tip here in using Canvas is the importance of managing your settings in Canvas. So there are certainly a lot of places within Canvas where you can set things up. Every assignment, every discussion board, a quiz, all have possibilities of dialing in when things open and close, dialing in whether students could say work on an assignment a second time if they don't receive a passing grade and all that kind of stuff. I'm thinking even though more globally here, to manage your settings, you'll click on your settings tab in Canvas. And this is where you set up all the important parameters of your class. And I won't go through all these, but as an example, on this very first page, you can create an image for your class. So that shows up very nicely in the course navigation browser that students see when they log on and that you see as well. The start and end date that is available here in Canvas, and a lot of announcements will come out about that prior to your class beginning. You can give a class description. You can set restrictions on when students can view the class. If you click over on sections, typically you'll only have one section of a class, but the next tab is very important, and that is navigation. Keep in mind when you're dragging and dropping items, if you drag them down here, they will no longer be visible. You always at the bottom have to hit save before you do that. I'll actually put that back up here. And anytime I'm ready to go, then I hit save, and the menu that I see on the side will then repopulate based on those choices I've made. So the navigation menu is one of the most important areas to manage your settings. If you'd like to use apps as well, you can click on the apps tab. There are so many apps available, like everything else in Canvas, as you can see here. The sky is truly the limit. We'll talk about this later, but certainly don't try to use all of these apps in your first go-around in Canvas, because just look at all that is available. Absolutely amazing in terms of all the possible features. And then if you click on feature options, this is sort of the deep dive of things like the gradebook and extra credit settings and final grade override. So what I recommend on this is you go in and you look at some of these settings. The defaults generally I would recommend are okay, but if you're very particular and you want to dial things in more for your preferences, definitely take a look and see if some of these might meet your needs. So as a general rule, just make sure to set up and manage those settings prior to your class beginning to make things as ideal for your students and their class experience as possible. So our sixth tip for today is the idea of offering interactivity in your Canvas class. Now, interactivity can be accomplished in a lot of different ways. I would argue that discussion boards are a great way to accomplish interactivity. I would also say that any kind of multimedia that you can use, it could be VoiceThread, it could be videos that you record here in Canvas Studio, maybe you share if you have a YouTube site. It could be any technology within Canvas in the rich content editor, including audio recording and video recording. Because by offering more a picture of who you are, by hearing your voice, by seeing your face in an audiovisual sense, students will have a greater appreciation that the class is active, it's moving, it's not just a correspondence class. Keep in mind that important accreditation standards and standards established by the CVC OEI through the California Community Colleges requires things like student-student interaction in your class, faculty-student interaction, of course, in your class. And if you don't have interaction beyond static completion of tests and assignments, if you don't offer any feedback on student discussion boards, you're not really doing your part in terms of making that class interactive. So however you decide to do it, just be sure to offer interactivity in your Canvas class. So our seventh tip today is to really focus on perfecting the syllabus that you offer for your students. We'll tell you in a lot of these trainings, but it's very important to repeat that the syllabus really is the boilerplate, the contract that you offer to your students, that you set up all your policies, whether those policies be related to grading or discussion posts or late assignments or all that kind of stuff. So every class should have a syllabus. Your Canvas class, of course, has a syllabus place, a placeholder, if you will, where you can put a PDF or a text version using the rich content editor. I'd like to remind you as well, if you go to the LTCC Teaching and Learning site, ltccteachingandlearning.com, you can click on a new feature called One-Pagers available at the top. And if you scroll to the bottom, you'll see a very specific PDF related to the syllabus. If you click on this, it'll give you some great tips you could follow. You can click on a video of a workshop that I offered on the syllabus. You can get important background information on the syllabus. You can take advantage of Canvas Commons resources that you can download into your class. You can choose other elements to download into your class. You can click on some useful links, and you could click on some syllabus snippets. And these I think are particularly useful for you. These were actually culled and generated through conversations and emails with faculty across the college. So various faculty wrote in and provided me their policies on mental health or Title IX, or their policies on DRC accommodations or plagiarism or classroom behavior. And the point of a syllabus is to have a very complete and comprehensive document. I know there's some opinions out there that you should have a super short syllabus, but that's actually a bad choice. If you have a short syllabus and there's a grade dispute, and you don't have information about late assignments in there, the grade dispute then could sometimes result in a student having your course grade overturned because you didn't provide enough information within the syllabus. So I do really recommend that you have as comprehensive a document as possible in your syllabus, because it is so important to provide students with that information up front before they even enroll in your class. Now, the next focus today here, number 8 in our tips on Canvas, is to really match your content with your features, with your learning outcomes in your class. And so decide up front what you're trying to teach. Decide up front what are some of the best approaches to teach. Should you do a live Zoom class if you're doing DE or EVE teaching? Should you have discussion boards? Should you have online problems that maybe are multimedia in nature? Again, if you take advantage of the apps in Canvas, of all the video possibilities of Canvas Studio, including video quizzes within Canvas Studio, which could be very useful for you, you really have to decide which features to use in Canvas. Canvas is a very full-featured learning management system, or LMS, so I don't think you'll ever be hard-pressed to find the tool, the piece of technology, the software, the app that's going to fit the bit of content you're trying to teach, the learning outcome that you're focused on in your class. But you really, as the instructor, have to decide how you want to integrate content through all the various technologies and apps within Canvas. So think about that very carefully. It might be nice to do a little mind map or concept map before you teach a class, where you could maybe have a concept and then draw an arrow or a line, a bubble, and then say, here is the technology or tool within Canvas that I'd like to use to better get my students to understand that concept or content within my class. So definitely think about the matching of the learning, of the tools, of the technology with the content or the learning outcomes that you're offering to your students in your class. Okay, our 9th tip today here as we get near the end of our list for using Canvas is to really consider using course analytics at some point during your teaching of your class. There are a couple different places to find analytics. If you go to your class menu, that right menu, you'll see New Analytics, and you can click on New Analytics. And this particular class, fortunately, is not any students, so we won't have any FERPA issues that I have to blur out students' names. But analytics are a great opportunity to really see who your students are, how much weekly activity they have spent, and this will show you the number of students and what people have viewed down to the most minute level of detail, so very useful to look at. You can always click on items. You can look at average page views. It's not unlike the analytics used in YouTube and so forth. You can click on your students and get a better profile of who's doing what in your class. So I really do recommend that you use analytics. Another way to find it is to click on the People tab on the left navigation menu, and you can actually then look at activity there. At any time, you could then click on the person using the 3-dot menu and click on New Analytics, and it will similarly take you back to that feature, but in this case, it will show you based on a particular person's name, a student's name, and it will show you all the activity of that student in your class. And keep in mind that analytics have become a real big feature in our world, certainly in sports. A lot of coaches have moved to analytics to really better understand coaching techniques, to see where they need to make improvements, to see how their offensive system, say in NBA basketball, is playing out, and so they can use raw data in many cases to be better able to plan for the future. I think the analogy to teaching is important then, to say you can see where students are struggling, you could see if they're not spending enough time in a particular area of course mastery, and then you can adapt and adjust your content on the fly during the quarter or certainly next quarter when you teach the class. So definitely consider using analytics in your class. It's a great tool, involves a little bit of learning, but I think will be well worth your time teaching in Canvas. And our last tip today, and one very important to remember, certainly something I would recommend to you, and I've been teaching since 2004, and back in the day I was not using anything as great as Canvas. I was writing my own HTML classes from scratch, but it's really to not do too much from the beginning. Don't try to use every feature in Canvas. Don't try to do everything because you'll just be overwhelmed. If you're brand new to teaching in Canvas, my recommendation is to get really the basics and work from the basics. And then the next quarter, when you teach in Canvas again, you can adapt and up your game a little bit by adding a few features here and there. I also recommend to you, if you go back to ltccteachingandlearning.com, I recommend the one-pager. Click on the one-pager tab, and specifically click on Getting Started in Canvas. This will give you many features in Canvas. It will allow you to click on everything from modules and pages to Canvas Studio to discussions, office hours, social aspects of Canvas, managing things like attendance and student behavior in the syllabus, and then providing you with important groups like the Canvas certification group here at LTCC, also answering some of your questions in Canvas, and many other areas. So by all means, if you want more information about some of the top 10 tips I've covered today here, looking at teaching in Canvas, go to the Teaching and Learning website, click on the one-pagers, take a look at this, and the idea behind this is you could quickly click on any of these and it will take you to the resource, it will take you to the video in question, and give you much more information about that area of Canvas. So just a great tip today is to remember to not do everything and try to do everything from the get-go if you're particularly new to Canvas. And even if you've been teaching for a while, I think certainly a recommendation is to think about offering just enough to your students in terms of content, in terms of apps and technology and software and all the features within Canvas, such that you don't overwhelm your students with having to do too much or having to learn too many different aspects or facets of the Canvas LMS. Let's keep in mind that our students themselves may be new to learning in Canvas, and so that learning curve certainly has to be considered when we think about teaching a class in Canvas. So that is it for today, looking here at our top 10 tips in Canvas. I hope this was useful for you in terms of thinking about some of the features of Canvas and some of the strategies that you might use in teaching your class in Canvas, whether you're teaching for the first time for us or if you've been teaching for a number of years here at LTCC. So good luck and keep it going in terms of innovation within Canvas. I think it's a really full-featured LMS, and it's hopefully one that you can use to your greatest advantage in offering your important class to our students here at Lake Tahoe Community College.